Hello, this is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is April 16th, 2024. Welcome to the program. Today I want to talk and make two main points. The first one is about foreign policy, the other one is immigration and how that affects the presidential election, specifically the 2024 presidential election. With foreign policy, as you are aware, we want to protect the United States and Americans, advance democracy, human rights, and other global interests. That's part of it for our discussion. For immigration, we want to allow people in, but we want them to come in legally. Now, why is this show important today with the presidential election? As you have probably read on some of the medias, that there have been people protesting against the Hamas and Israel war. Now, I wanted to give a little background about this just in case you didn't know. So, this isn't the first time that the Palestinians and Israelis have fought. Now, in 1967, there was a big war where Israel defeated them and the Arabs, in case you were wondering. And the United States didn't help them at all. But that's for a different show. There has been some dangerous rhetoric going on in Michigan and Pennsylvania, for example. Its hateful rhetoric is unacceptable, according to the governor of Michigan. The Dearborn community is full of hardworking, proud Americans. Our state is diverse, and we are proud of it. What was she talking about? It was this death to Israel, death to America that came out last week from Dearborn, Michigan, who have a high Palestinian population. Now, I'm not going to get into if the Muslims and Palestinians are the same people. But for our discussion, I'm talking about Palestinian-driven protest in Michigan. In Pennsylvania, the Senator John Fetterman, who's a Democrat, disagreed with President Biden on his stance that the U.S. wouldn't join in an offensive operation against Iran. And he said that we should never capitulate to the fringe of his party, meaning the Democrats. Now, those 2 points are very important to presidential elections. Haven't you wondered why President Biden's numbers have dipped in Pennsylvania and in Michigan? The reason is because the Palestinian, let's just call them Arabians. That's more generic, and we're not trying to focus just on one of them, but let's focus on Arabians. This is important because we as Americans should be looking out for our interests. I read that to you earlier, what our foreign policy goals are. Advance, protect the United States and Americans. Now, in this presidential election, what you can see happening is this is important because these are swing states. And the election is so close that 200,000 votes can get one of the candidates the state. Why are the Arabians doing that? Well, they want to protect the people in Palestine, and I get that, but the U.S. did not cause the issues happening in that country. And the Palestinians / Arabians are going against American policy by doing that. No other group has done that but the Arabians. If you go back and look 10 years, 20 years, when people, and this is the immigration part, when they immigrate to the United States and become U.S. citizens, they haven't done like other groups who have come into the country and become Americans and actually have taken the position of being Americans and having American values. And part of the values are when someone goes in and kidnaps people and kills them, we're on the side of the people trying to protect themselves. Now, a little bit of history about this immigration is, so 20th century, we know, because some of you are my age, in your 60s, and you remember when we were letting in Arabians from Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Why were we doing that? Because they were being oppressed in their own countries, and at the time, the leadership thought that if we brought them here, and if they had a chance to be prosperous, that that was a good thing. 9% of New York residents are Arabians, American Muslims. Chicago has a significant population of Palestinians. 85,000 live in Chicago. Why? Because Chicago is sanctuary city, so is New York City. But for our discussion specifically, as it affects the presidential election, this group has decided to protest and block highways. They've decided to disrupt Congress, state and local level as well. And what they don't realize is that they are alienating the rest of the nation based on that. We in the United States do not mind people peacefully protesting. Traditionally, when this happens, we're talking about something within the country. So, for example, in Michigan, if they were being blocked from voting in the election or putting forward a candidate, we would all agree that they should be protesting this. What we've done and what they have done is they're taking a stance with an enemy of the United States, which would be, in this case, Hamas. And they are saying that they are siding with Hamas by virtue of these protests when they're blocking roads and doing those things. So I had to be careful how I say that because it's very specific what they are doing. And in the election, they are also threatening the Democrats with staying home. If you will remember, it was 2 months ago during the primaries in Michigan and in Pennsylvania and some in Iowa, where the Democratic president, Biden, there was 85,000 votes that weren't committed, basically. So they're using that as leverage to force the president to side with the Palestinians, and I won't use the word Hamas because nobody wants Hamas to win. However, I'll have to remind you that the Palestinians voted Hamas as their government overwhelmingly. During the presidential election, the president has actually had to distance himself. In Michigan and in Pennsylvania, they've had to distance themselves from those supporters. And let's not forget, there's a couple of people in the House of Representatives who have the same stance. So I'm saying all of that to say that the people saying this who are Americans need to remember our foreign policy goal: protecting the United States and Americans, advance democracy, human rights, and other global interests. And when they did that, like I said earlier, they are alienating the majority, because no one can be for taking hostages and killing people at a concert. And if the Palestinians in this case really want to help, they should volunteer to go into Gaza and some of these other areas and negotiate releasing those hostages, and also to bring in humanitarian aid. The Arabians are the first group, and I'm talking about the American Muslims and the Palestinians, who have taken the side of their home country or home area when no other groups in the United States has done that. And they have set a dangerous precedent that will affect the presidential elections by virtue of we cannot help their causes if they're going to side with a group whose ultimate goal is to destroy anyone who doesn't think like they do. This is Just Listen. This is George. Let me know what you think.